welcome back. In this video, we are going to go over the solutions to the odd problems in our 2.1 practice set. And if you remember, this set is all about inductive reasoning and conditional statements. So let's take a look at question 1. The instructions tell us if the given statement is not in if-then form, rewrite it. That's the first thing. Then identify the hypothesis and conclusion. Then write the converse, the inverse, and the contrapositive. So we have quite a few steps for each of these problems. Let's look at number 1. If a figure is a square, then it has 4 sides. Well, it is already in the if-then form, so we don't have to rewrite it. So that's good. Part A is done. It's already in if-then format. But what is the hypothesis? Remember, the hypothesis is always with if. Hypothesis goes with if. So a figure is a square. That's going to be our hypothesis. And then the conclusion, of course, goes with the then portion. So it has 4 sides. Notice again how we are not including the words if and then in the hypothesis and conclusion. It's just the portion of the phrase without the words if and then, okay? Let's take a look at the converse of this statement. Remember, converse means you are going to switch the hypothesis and the conclusion. You're just switching them, rewriting the statement in the reverse order. That's all you're doing for converse, okay? So to switch it, we would say, if a figure has 4 sides, then it is a square. That's going to be our converse. For the inverse, notice that sounds like the letter N. That's when you negate it or you not it, like N-O-T, not. So you do the opposite of the hypothesis and the conclusion. They stay in the same order, you just do the opposite of what it means. So we would say, if a figure is not a square, right, because that would be the opposite, then it does not have 4 sides. That's how you do inverse. You simply stick the word not in there to make it be the opposite of what it means now, okay? So once again, inverse is, if a figure is not a square, then it does not have 4 sides. And lastly, we want to do the contrapositive, which is switching the hypothesis and conclusion and also negating as well. So we're going to switch and negate, okay? So this would be, if a figure does not have 4 sides, then it is not a square. And that's it, guys. And the reason why they ask you to do it in this order, you do converse, then inverse, then contrapositive, is because when you get to the contrapositive, all you have to do is switch the inverse to get the right answer. So once the inverse has been completed, contrapositive is just switching it to get the answer, okay? Let's move on to number 3. For number 3, we need to do the same thing, determine if it's an if-then format and rewrite it if necessary, come up with the hypothesis and the conclusion, as well as the converse, the inverse, and the contrapositive. Lucky for us, this one is already in if-then format. If x equals -8, then the absolute value of x equals +8. So that was already in if-then format. The hypothesis is the portion that is with if. That's the part that is at the beginning, and that's going to be just x equals -8. No if. The conclusion is going to be the part with then, which is the absolute value of x, equals 8. Don't include the word then. For the converse, remember you're switching. Conclusion comes first, hypothesis goes last. So if the absolute value of x equals 8, then x equals -8. Doesn't matter if it's true or not. We're just writing the conditionals and the related conditional statements. That's all, okay? So converse, we switch. Inverse next. Inverse, we are going to negate it or put the word not in it. And you could use mathematical symbols for this. I'm going to write the word not. But we would say if x does not equal -8, then the absolute value of x does not equal 8. And once again, you could use the mathematical symbol for not equal. And that would have been an equal sign with a slash through it, but I didn't have that symbol, so let's keep going. And the contrapositive, remember, is just where you're going to switch and negate, and a really simple shortcut is just to switch the inverse that you just did, just switch the inverse. So if the absolute value of x is not equal 8, then x does not equal -8. And that's number 3. Let's move on. For this next section, we need to determine the truth value. And if it's false, we need to give a counterexample. And remember, truth value is simply, is it true or false? So number 5, if a number is prime, then it is odd. So that's basically saying that all prime numbers are odd. Is that true or is that false? That's going to be false, guys. That's false. And we can come up with a counterexample for that. Number 2. 2 is prime and 2 is even. It is not an odd number, okay? Number 7, if the shape is a triangle, then the sum of the interior angles is 180 degrees. And that is true, okay? Triangles do have interior sums of 180 degrees. So no counterexample for that because it is true, okay? Moving on, we're almost done with this practice set. Okay, let's look at the last few problems here. Number 9, the instructions say find the pattern for each sequence. Use the pattern to determine the next 2 terms. So it looks like we have a J, F, M, A, M. Now, what could those letters be referring to? Is it just alphabet letters? Or is there something else with this pattern? J, F, M, A, M. You know, that looks a lot like the months of the year, like January, February, March, April, May. I think that's working out. So the next 2 months after May will be June, July. So that should be JJ as the answer, because these letters are the first letters of the months of the year. That's the pattern. Number 11. Number 11 says 1, -1, 2, -2, 3. It looks like the numbers are going up but you repeat the number and it's negative right behind it. So 1, then -1. So same number, but you made it negative. Then move up to the next number, 2, -2. Next whole number, 3. So I would think you're going to put -3 next, and then +4. Okay. Last part, use the sequence below and inductive reasoning to make a conjecture. Number 13, what is the design of the 5th item? What is the design of the 5th item? Let's take a look at this. We see circle, triangle, square, star, and then again, circle, triangle, square, star. That's one part of the pattern. So we can see there's 4 different shapes, and a star is always 4th, okay? Square is always 3rd, triangle 2nd, circle is 1st. So that's one bit of information. And what is a factor of 15? 3 is, okay? So we know this 15th item should be a square. If we continued out, every time we get to a 3rd number, it should be a square shape there. But also, there's a design issue here too, right? We see squiggles, stripes, boxes, squiggles, stripes, boxes, and that's repeating every 3 times. So since the checkerboard or this crossing pattern right here, we're seeing this square is repeating every 3 times, and since 15 is a multiple of 3, the design we're going to see is that checkerboard type pattern. Right, so it's a multiple of 3, and we know that that pattern is occurring every 3rd item. The design will be checkerboard. All right, that will conclude the video with the solutions to the odd numbers of this 2.1 practice set. See you in the next lesson.